The red dust attracted her. 7 swirled around Mira Chen's boots as she climbed higher into volcanic ridge. The young scientist clutched her data scanner close to her chest, careful not to let the expensive equipment slip on the rocky path. Above her, 3 moons hung in the purple sky, casting strange shadows across the mining colony below. Mira knew she shouldn't be here. The old lava tubes were marked as restricted territory by the Skartesh overseers. But her research on bioluminescent organisms couldn't wait. These caves held secrets that could change everything scientists knew about life in extreme conditions. She had to see them with her own eyes. The entrance to the cave system yawned before her like a dark mouth. Mira switched on her headlamp and stepped inside. The temperature dropped immediately, and the sound of her breathing echoed off ancient stone walls. Blue and green lights flickered along the cave ceiling. The organisms she had come to study. They pulsed gently, creating patterns that seemed almost alive with intelligence. She walked deeper, recording everything with her scanner. The beauty of this place took her breath away. No, one of the Skartesh wanted to keep people out. This wasn't just a cave. It was a natural cathedral of light and stone. Then she heard voices. Mira froze. The voices were speaking in the harsh, clicking language of the Skartesh. She crept forward and peered around a massive stalagmite. Her heart nearly stopped. 5 Skartesh stood in a large chamber, loading metallic crates onto hover sleds. The crates bore official colony seals, but Mira recognized a distinctive shimmer of processed Titan ore inside them. That ore was supposed to go to the Colonial Distribution Center, not into private Skartesh hands. They were stealing from the colony. One of the Skartesh turned his reptilian head suddenly, his forked tongue tasting the air. Smell that? Mammal sweat. Human. Myra's blood turned to ice. She backed away slowly, but her boots scraped against loose gravel. The sound echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. There! The largest Skartesh pointed directly at her hiding spot. Stop her. Mira ran. Her lungs burned as she sprinted deeper into the cave system, abandoning her planned route. Behind her, she could hear the clicking calls of the Skartesh and the pounding of their clawed feet on stone. The tunnel twisted and turned. She had no idea where she was going. Her headlamp bounced wildly, showing glimpses of passages that branched in every direction. She chose paths at random, driven only by panic and the need to escape. A plasma bolt sizzled past her head, scorching the wall beside her. They were shooting at her. They were actually trying to kill her. You saw too much human, one of them shouted. Should have stayed in your soft quarters. Mira burst into an enormous cavern and skidded to a stop. The space was huge, easily the size of several buildings. Strange markings covered the walls, symbols she didn't recognize. The floor was littered with what looked like tools and equipment, all arranged around a central area that seemed almost like a home. She spun around, looking for another exit. There was none. She was trapped. The Skartesh appeared at the entrance behind her, their weapons raised. The leader smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. End of the run, little mammal, he said. But we won't waste ammunition. This is the beast lair. He'll handle you for us. What beast? Mira demanded, backing toward the center of the cavern. Her answer came as a deep, rumbling growl that seemed to shake the very stones beneath her feet. From the shadows of the far end of the cavern, something massive moved. The Skartesh laughed. The dragon, the exiled Drakari who lives in these depths. Goodbye, witness. They raised strange devices and fired at the cave entrance. Explosives. Mira watched in horror as the charges detonated, bringing tons of rock crashing down. The Skartesh disappeared behind the avalanche. Dust filled the air, choking and blinding. Then came another sound, the whoosh of something enormous moving through the air. Mira looked up just as a massive shadow descended upon her. She screamed and threw her arms over her head. But death didn't come. Instead, she felt something warm and leathery settle over her like a protective dome. The falling rocks crashed and bounced off this living shield. The sound was deafening. Dust and small stones rained down for what felt like forever. Finally, silence fell. Mira opened her eyes slowly. She was surrounded by darkness, but it was warm, breathing. Above her, she could hear the steady rhythm of a massive heartbeat. A deep voice rumbled in accented galactic common. "Be still, small one. You are safe now." Myra's entire body trembled as the enormous wings slowly lifted away from her. Dust cascaded off the leathery membrane like a waterfall. She looked up and up, her neck craning back, until she saw the creature that had saved her life. He was massive, at least 12 feet tall, with scales that shimmered between deep purple and midnight blue in the dim light. 2 great wings folded against his back, each one large enough to cover a small vehicle. His face was long and angular, with eyes that glowed like molten gold. Horns curved back from his head in an elegant sweep. A dragon, a real dragon from the stories. "You speak common?" Mira whispered, her voice shaking. The creature nodded slowly. "I am Vormalik. I learn your language from colony broadcasts. My speaking is not perfect." He tilted his head, studying her with those incredible golden eyes. "Why do the Skartesh hunt you, human child?" "I'm not a child. I'm 19, Mira said automatically, then felt foolish. What did age matter when facing a dragon? They were stealing ore. I saw them. They trapped us both in here, so they thought you would kill you, Vormalik finished. His voice was sad. They think I am monster. Savage beast who murders without thought. He moved away from her, settling his bulk onto the cavern floor. I am not monster. I am exile. Myra's scientific curiosity slowly overcame her fear. She stood on shaky legs, brushing dust from her clothes. Exile? From where? From Drakkar Prime, my home world. Vormalik gestured to the cavern around them with one clawed hand. My people are warriors, strong fighters, born to combat. But I... He paused, searching for words. I refuse to fight for conquest. I want to study stars, to learn, to create. This is weakness to my clan. They send me away. That's not weakness, Mira said quietly. That's brave. Vormalik's eyes widened slightly, as if no one had ever said such a thing to him before. A grinding sound from the collapsed entrance made them both turn. Dust still trickled from between the massive boulders that blocked their way out. We need to find another exit, Mira said, forcing herself to think practically. Do you have food? Water? How long can we survive in here? Vormalik rose and walked to a corner of his lair. He returned with a container of water and some dried provisions. I have supply for maybe 4 days. Maybe 5 if we are careful. Air is good. Thermal vents bring oxygen from deep below. But main exit is gone. Mira pulled out her scanner, grateful it had survived the cave-in. She activated the geological mapping function. There has to be another way out. These volcanic systems are usually connected by multiple passages. Vormalik leaned closer, interested. What is this device? A geological scanner. It uses sound waves to map underground structures. She pointed to the screen. See? There's a network of thermal vents that runs deep beneath us. Some of them might lead to other exits. The deep vents, Vormalik said slowly. Very hot. Dangerous. Many creatures live there. More dangerous than staying here and suffocating? Mira asked. The dragon made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are brave for small human. Most would cry and wait for death. I'm a scientist. Scientists solve problems. Mira studied the scan results more carefully. These vents, how hot are they? Hot enough to melt metal, but not hot enough to hurt Drakkari. We are born in volcanic nests. Heat is like water to your kind. Mira looked at the burns on Vormalik's wings from when he had shielded her. Without thinking, she reached out. You're hurt. Let me help. Vormalik pulled back slightly, surprised. You wish to help me? You saved my life. Of course I want to help. Mira opened her field medical kit. I don't know much about Drakkari biology, but burns are burns. May I? Slowly, Vormalik extended his wing. Mira could see the scorched areas where falling rocks had damaged the delicate membrane. She worked carefully, applying synthetic skin patches and antibacterial gel. Her hands looked tiny against the scales. "Why do you fear me not?" Vormalik asked softly. Mira paused, considering. "Because you didn't have to save me. You could have let me die and kept yourself safe. But you didn't. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are." Vormalik was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Tomorrow, we climb down into thermal vents. I carry you through hot zones. You guide us with your device. Together, we escape." "Together," Mira agreed, finishing the bandaging. She looked up at the massive dragon and smiled. "Partners?" Vormalik's golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Partners," he rumbled. The entrance to the thermal vent system yawned before them like the throat of some ancient beast. Heat waves shimmered in the air, and Mira could feel sweat already forming on her forehead. She checked her scanner one more time, tracing the path they would need to follow. "The temperature down there will reach over 200 degrees, she said, looking up at Vormalik. "Are you sure you can handle it?" The dragon nodded, his scales seeming to shimmer with anticipation. "This heat is nothing, like warm summer day to me." He lowered himself onto all fours. "Climb onto my back. Stay close to my body. My scales will protect you from worse heat." Mira hesitated only a moment before climbing up. Vormalik's scales were surprisingly smooth, and warmth radiated from his body like a living furnace. She settled herself between his shoulder blades, gripping the ridge of scales along his spine. "Ready?" Vormalik asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," Mira replied. They descended into the vent. The passage was wide enough for Vormalik to walk comfortably, but it sloped steeply downward. The temperature climbed with every step. Mira pressed herself flat against the dragon's back, grateful for his natural heat resistance. Orange light glowed from cracks in the walls where magma flowed beneath the surface. Strange crystalline formations jutted from the ceiling, catching the light and throwing it back in rainbow patterns. Despite the danger, Mira couldn't help but marvel at the beauty. "Watch the scanner," Vormalik reminded her. "Tell me which way to go." Mira forced her attention back to the device. Left at the next junction, then straight for about 50 meters. They traveled deeper. The heat became almost unbearable, even with Vormalik's protection. Mira soaked a cloth with water from her pack and draped it over her head. Steam rose from it almost immediately. Then she noticed something strange on the walls. Tiny organisms, glowing pale blue, clustered around the cooler areas. "Stop," she said suddenly. Vormalik froze. "Danger?" "No. Look at these microorganisms." Mira pointed to the glowing patches. "They only grow where the temperature is survivable. They're like natural thermometers. If we follow the patches, we'll stay in the safest zones." "You are clever, Mirachin," Vormalik said with approval in his voice. They adjusted their path, following the blue glow. The passage narrowed, forcing Vormalik to fold his wings tighter against his body. Myra's scanner beeped a warning. "What is it?" Vormalik asked. "Movement. Something large. About 30 meters ahead." Myra's heart raced. "Multiple contacts. They're moving toward us." A chittering sound echoed through the tunnel. It was unlike anything Mira had ever heard. High and sharp, like glass scraping against metal. Then she saw them. Creatures emerged from the shadows ahead. They looked like enormous centipedes made entirely of living crystal. Each one was at least 10 feet long, with hundreds of legs that clicked against the stone. Their bodies reflected the magma light, making them seem to glow from within. Sharp mandibles clicked at the front of their heads. "Board WRMS," Vormalik growled. "Very dangerous. They hunt by feeling vibrations in stone." 3 of the crystalline creatures advanced toward them, their bodies undulating in a hypnotic pattern. Vormalik roared, a sound so powerful that Mira felt it vibrate through her entire body. He lunged forward, meeting the first board WRM head-on. His claws raked across its crystalline body, but the creature's hide was incredibly hard. It wrapped around him, trying to crush him with its coiling body. Vormalik's jaws clamped down on its neck, and there was a sound like breaking glass. The board WIRM thrashed wildly. 2 more creatures attacked from the sides. Vormalik was strong, but he couldn't fight all 3 at once. One of them surged toward Mira, its mandibles opening wide. Myra's mind raced. Vibrations. They hunted by vibrations. That meant sound. High-frequency sound could disrupt them. She grabbed her scanner and frantically adjusted its settings. The device wasn't designed for this, but she could overload its sonic mapping function. She punched in commands, her fingers flying across the screen. Vormalik, cover your ears. The dragon immediately pressed his head against the ground, covering his ear holes with his clawed hands. Mira activated the scanner at maximum output. A piercing screech filled the tunnel. The bored WRMS immediately stopped attacking. They writhed and twisted, their crystal bodies vibrating violently. Cracks appeared along their segments. They retreated rapidly, disappearing back into the deeper passages. Silence fell, broken only by Vormalik's heavy breathing. He slowly uncovered his ears and looked back at Mira with amazement. "You saved us," he said simply. Myra's hands were shaking. "You fought them off. I just found their weakness." Vormalik stood carefully, checking to make sure she was still secure on his back. This is what partners do. Each one brings strength. Together, we are stronger than alone. Together, Mira agreed, her voice steady now. She checked the scanner. The sonic blast had drained most of its power, but it still functioned. The passage opens up ahead. "I think we're getting close to another exit." "Then we continue," Vormalik said. "We will see sky again, Mira-chun. I promise this." The tunnel finally opened into a chamber so vast that Myra's headlamp couldn't reach the far walls. But this was no natural cave. Smooth walls rose around them, covered in intricate carvings and symbols. Pillars of polished stone supported a ceiling decorated with star maps that still glowed faintly with ancient light. "What is this place?" Mira whispered, sliding down from Vormalik's back. The dragon stood perfectly still, his golden eyes wide with shock. He moved forward slowly, almost reverently, his claws clicking softly on the polished floor. He reached out and touched one of the carved walls. His hand trembled. "These symbols," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is Drackery writing. Ancient Drackery, from before the clan wars." He turned to look at Mira, and she could see something like tears forming in his eyes. "My people were here, on this moon, long ago." Mira approached the walls, studying the carvings. Even without understanding the language, she could see they told a story. Images of Drackery working together, building, creating. Not warriors, but architects and artists and scientists. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal with a crystalline device embedded in its surface. Myra's scanner detected a power signature still pulsing within it. "Vormalik, look at this. It's still active." The dragon joined her, and together they examined the device. Carefully, Mira pressed her hand against the crystal. It flared to life, and suddenly the air above the pedestal shimmered with holographic images. A Drackery appeared, female, wearing robes decorated with scientific symbols. She began to speak in the ancient language. Vormalik translated, his voice halting as he struggled with the old words. She says, "This was a colony, a place of learning. Drackery came here to study the stars, to understand the universe. But then came the clan wars. The warrior clans demanded everyone return home to fight. These scholars refused. They wanted peace, not war. The hologram shifted, showing images of conflict, ships arriving, Drackery fighting against Drackery, fire and destruction. The warrior clans attacked the colony." Vormalik continued. "They called the scholars cowards and traitors. The scholars were forced to flee. They sealed their records here, hoping someday others would find them and remember that Drackery were once more than just warriors." The hologram faded, leaving them in silence. Vormalik sank to the floor, his massive body shaking. "I am not alone," he whispered. "Others before me chose knowledge over war. Others were punished for wanting peace." Mira knelt beside him, placing a hand on his scaled forearm. "This proves your people have always had scholars and thinkers. The warrior clans just tried to erase that history." "The Skartesh," Vormalik said suddenly, his head snapping up. "They mine these caves. They must know about this place. They are destroying my people's heritage for profit." Myra's mind raced. If we can download these records, we can expose what they're doing. This is a protected heritage site. Galactic law forbids mining or looting such places. She pulled out her scanner and connected it to the ancient device. Data began flowing, thousands of years of history and knowledge transferring into the small device. Progress bar climbed slowly, 20%, 40%, 60%. Then alarms blared throughout the chamber. Red lights flashed along the walls. "What did you do?" Vormalik asked, rising to his feet. "Nothing. The system must have automatic security. It's broadcasting a signal." Mira checked her scanner's communications array. Her blood ran cold. "It's transmitting on Skartesh frequencies. They know we're here. They know we found this place." The download reached 80%, 90%. The lights flickered. How long until complete? Vormalik demanded. 30 seconds, maybe less. A distant rumbling echoed through the tunnels. Not natural. Mechanical. Engines and equipment moving through the cave system. "They are coming," Vormalik said. "Many of them." The download completed just as the first sounds of voices reached them from the tunnel entrance. Mira yanked her scanner free and clutched it to her chest. "I've got it. All of it. The entire historical record." "Then we run," Vormalik said, scooping her up and placing her on his back. "Hold tight." He spread his wings and launched himself toward a different exit on the far side of the chamber. Behind them, lights appeared in the entrance tunnel. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, missing them by inches. "Stop them," someone shouted. "They cannot leave with that data." Vormalik roared and flew faster, his wings beating powerfully. They plunged into another tunnel, as more weapons' fire lit up the ancient chamber behind them. An explosion rocked the walls, sending debris raining down. "They're trying to kill us," Mira shouted over the chaos. "They're trying to bury the truth," Vormalik corrected. "But we will not let them. We will show the galaxy what they hide." A plasma bolt struck Vormalik's left wing. He roared in pain but kept flying, even as smoke rose from the burned membrane. His flight became unsteady, but he refused to stop. "Vormalik, you're hurt." "I will not fall," he growled through clenched teeth. "Not while you carry the proof. Not while truth depends on us." Vormalik crashed through a narrow opening, his wounded wings scraping against stone. They tumbled into a smaller chamber, and Mira rolled clear as the dragon collapsed. Smoke still rose from the plasma burn across his wing membrane. The wound was deep and angry, glowing at the edges. "No, no, no." Mira scrambled to his side, her hands hovering over the injury. "We need to stop the bleeding." "No time," Vormalik gasped. His golden eyes were dim with pain. "They come. You must hide, take the data, and run." "I'm not leaving you," Mira said firmly. She pulled out what remained of her medical supplies and began treating the wound. Her hands worked quickly, applying gel and patches even as footsteps echoed in the tunnel behind them. Vormalik used his good wing to push a fallen pillar across the entrance. It wouldn't hold long, but it gave them minutes. Mira helped him drag more debris to reinforce their barricade. "This is foolish," Vormalik said, but there was warmth in his voice. "You could escape through the vent behind us." "And leave my partner? Never." Mira pulled out her scanner and accessed its communication functions. The signal was weak this deep underground, but it was there. She set it to broadcast on all frequencies and began uploading the historical data. "What are you doing?" Vormalik asked. "Sending everything to the colonial network. Every news outlet, every government channel, every public forum. If the Skartesh kill us, the truth still gets out." The upload progress bar appeared. 5%, 10%. The signal was painfully slow this deep in the caves. Footsteps stopped outside their barricade. A harsh voice called out, "Human, we know you're in there. Surrender the data and come out. We'll let you live. The beast dies either way." Mira looked at Vormalik. The dragon met her eyes and shook his head slowly. He knew it was a lie. "Here's my answer," Mira shouted back. She activated her scanner's external speaker and played back a portion of the historical record. The ancient Drackery scholar's voice echoed through the tunnels, speaking of peace and knowledge and a better way. Silence fell on the other side of the barricade. Then the Skartesh commander spoke again, and his voice was cold with fury. "You stupid girl. You just signed your death warrant. Destroy them both. Bring down this entire chamber, if you have to." Explosives detonated against the barricade. Stone cracked and crumbled. Vormalik struggled to his feet, placing himself between Mira and the entrance. Even wounded, even exhausted, he would not abandon his defensive position. The upload reached 40%, 50%. "Mira," Vormalik said quietly, "if I fall, you run. Promise me." "If you fall, I fight beside you," Mira replied. "That's what partners do." The barricade exploded inward. Skartesh soldiers poured through, weapons raised. There were at least a dozen of them, all armed with plasma rifles and shock batons. Vormalik roared, and the sound was like thunder. He lunged forward despite his injury, his claws flashing. He fought not with the cold precision of a trained warrior, but with desperate fury born of protecting someone he cared about. 2 Skartesh went down immediately. A third fell as Vormalik's tail whipped around, striking like a club, but there were too many. Plasma bolts struck his scales, each one leaving a scorch mark. He roared in pain but didn't stop fighting. Mira grabbed a piece of broken stone and threw it at the nearest soldier. It struck his weapon arm, making his shot go wide. She looked around frantically. The vent system. If she could trigger a collapse in just the right place. The upload hit 75%. Mira ran to the wall where her scanner had detected unstable rock formations. She pulled out her emergency flare gun, standard equipment for cave exploration. She fired directly at the weak point. The flare exploded. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire wall began to groan. "Vormalik, get down!" The dragon dropped flat. Mira threw herself beside him as tons of rock came crashing down. The collapse cut the chamber in half, separating them from most of the Skartesh soldiers. Dust filled the air so thick that Mira couldn't see her hand in front of her face. When it cleared, only 2 Skartesh remained on their side of the cave-in. The commander and 1 soldier. Both looked shaken, but still held their weapons. The upload reached 95%. "It's over," the commander hissed. "Even if your data reaches the surface, you'll be dead. No one will believe it came from you. They'll believe it." A new voice called from somewhere above. "Because I've been monitoring this entire situation." A rope dropped from a crack in the ceiling. Colonial security forces in full armor rappelled down, weapons trained on the Skartesh. The commander's face went pale. "Mira Chun," the security captain called. "We received your transmission. Every word, every image. The Galactic Council is already mobilizing." The upload hit 100%. Mira sagged against Vormalik, relief flooding through her. The dragon curled his good wing around her protectively, and she could hear his heart beating strong and steady. "We did it," she whispered. "We did it," Vormalik agreed. 3 weeks later, Mira stood at the entrance of the ancient chamber, now officially designated a Galactic Heritage Site. Vormalik stood beside her, his wings fully healed. The Skartesh had been arrested. The smuggling operation was shut down, and the Drackery homeworld had sent ambassadors to meet the exile who had preserved their forgotten history. The best part was a letter in Myra's pocket, an official appointment as xenological liaison between humanity and the Drackery people. And her partner in this new role? The dragon who had shielded her with his wings when the world tried to crush them both. Vormalik looked down at her, his golden eyes warm. "Ready for next adventure, small scientist?" Mira grinned up at him. "Always, my friend. Always." The twin sons of Drakkar. 7 rose over the volcanic landscape, painting everything in shades of gold and crimson. And in that light, a human and a dragon stood together. Proof that the strongest bonds are forged not in battle, but in courage, trust, and the choice to stand together when everything else falls apart.